It's the season of peace and goodwill. But for these 4 people, Christmas was the most terrifying night of their lives. Welcome to Horror Drop. We explore the strange, the unexplained, and the unsettling stories hidden within ordinary life. Tonight, we're delving into 4 true accounts where the comfort of the holidays was shattered by pure dread. These aren't campfire tales. These are personal experiences, shared by those who lived through them, where the familiar became frightening and the festive turned to fear. Our first story comes from Liam. This happened last December. My partner was visiting family out of state, so I had our quiet, 2-story house to myself for an entire week. I live in a remote, wooded part of New Hampshire, and with most neighbors gone for the season, the whole street felt abandoned. At first, the profound silence was a gift. I looked forward to the rest, the solitude. But by the second night, the isolation began to feel heavy, palpable. It was dark by 5, a light, persistent powder falling, blanketing everything in an eerie hush. I was in the kitchen trying to cook a simple meal, which I'm terrible at, when I first heard it. I had the TV on for background noise, but this sound cut through the dialogue. I reached for the remote and turned the volume all the way down. It was singing, muffled, but unmistakable, coming from outside my front door. It wasn't cheerful, communal caroling. It was a single, tuneless, almost mournful voice, slowly dragging through the notes of Silent Night. The voice was unquestionably adult, male. Cold knot formed in my stomach. I moved cautiously to the door. The singing grew louder with each step, as if the person was standing right on my porch. I took a breath, trying to rationalize. It's just a lost caroler, I told myself, maybe a bit odd, maybe had a few too many. I unlocked and opened the door. Under the harsh glow of the porch light stood a man, maybe in his 30s. His jacket was threadbare, and he wore no hat or gloves. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring intently at the worn floorboards, singing that same slow, off-key verse, his breath forming clouds in the air. I managed a weak, confused smile. He finished the line, paused for a shuddering breath, and then started the song again from the very beginning. This time, as he sang Silent Night, Holy Night, his eyes lifted and locked directly onto mine. Any semblance of friendliness or politeness drained from me. He was looping the song. I stood there in my doorway, trapped in this bizarre, chilling ritual, the cold air rushing in. After several agonizing minutes, I mumbled a quiet, "Thank you," and slowly closed the door. The singing didn't stop. It just continued, unabated, on the other side of the thin wood. I went back to the kitchen, but I couldn't touch my food. The sound, that same dreary stanza, filled the empty rooms of the house. After about 10 minutes, it finally ceased. The sudden quiet was somehow louder, more threatening. I crept back and peered through the side window. He wasn't on the porch. He had moved. He was now standing at the very foot of my long driveway, perfectly still, facing the house directly. Not singing, just watching, a dark silhouette against the snow. That silent observation was infinitely worse. I threw the door open and firmly told him to leave, that this was private property. No reaction, not even a blink. I threatened to call the police right now. I shut the door hard. Through the glass, I saw he didn't move a muscle. Not wanting to escalate things with someone who seemed unstable, I decided to just retreat upstairs to bed and ignore him. From my dark bedroom window, I checked one last time. The driveway was finally empty. A wave of relief washed over me. I changed, got into bed, and picked up a book. 20 minutes later, as I was reading, I heard it again. Silent Night. But now it was coming from behind the house, from the direction of my fenced-in backyard. My heart hammered against my ribs. I ran to the back window, peeling the curtain aside. He was down there, standing in the deep snow of my backyard, his head tilted up, staring directly at my illuminated window while he sang. A surge of anger and fear overtook me. I slammed the window open and screamed down that I was calling the police right now. The singing stopped instantly. For 3 long seconds, there was nothing but the howling wind. Then he moved. He sprinted with shocking speed toward my back door. I heard the handle rattle violently, then a scream erupted. Not a human yell, but a raw, guttural, animalistic shriek that seemed to shake the window pane in its frame. Then the banging started. Not knocking. Violent, thunderous, full-body impacts on the door, like he was throwing himself against it. I fumbled for my phone and called 911, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and hid in my bedroom closet, pulling the doors shut. The operator stayed on the line as the horrific screams and bone-jarring blows echoed up through the floorboards. And then, as suddenly as it began, silence. An absolute, deafening silence. I stayed put, barely breathing, until I saw the flashing red and blue lights paint my walls. The police arrived. They found deep, frantic footprints directly under my window and at the door, which was dented but still locked. The trail led off into the dense woods behind my property. They took a report, but they weren't particularly concerned. "People act strange around the holidays," one officer said with a shrug. But I knew. He wasn't just strange. He wasn't confused. He wanted in. The most familiar song can become a soundtrack to pure terror. Our second story is from Kara, who was only 6 years old at the time. My childhood Christmas that year was, on the surface, perfect. Among my gifts were tickets to 2 professional basketball games that same week. I was ecstatic. After the first game, I was buzzing with excitement for days. The second game, we had seats up in the higher levels. During halftime, I walked with my family through the packed, noisy concourse to get food. In the crowd, I stepped just a few feet away to toss a candy wrapper. That's when a tall, thin man appeared beside me. "You look lost," he said, his voice calm. I shook my head no. "Let's go find your folks," he offered, and without waiting, he took my small hand in his. I was a shy kid. I went along. He led me firmly away from the crowds and the noise, up dimming ramps toward the empty, concrete top levels of the arena. He said we'd find a security guard or use the intercom. But when we reached a deserted concession area, it was completely silent and deserted. He glanced at his phone, its screen lighting up his face, then tried to guide me toward a heavy door marked stairs. That's when every stranger danger lesson from my parents finally screamed in my head. When he momentarily let go of my hand to pull the door open a crack, I ran. I didn't look back. I found my older brother back at the seats, but I was too scared and ashamed to tell anyone what happened. On the long drive home, a massive truck blared its horn right beside us. I jumped and looked over. It was him in the driver's seat with 2 other shadowy figures in the cab. They didn't gesture or yell. They just stared, their faces expressionless in the passing streetlights. I stayed silent, frozen in my seatbelt. That night, I woke up from a deep sleep to a bright, scanning light flickering against my bedroom curtain. I crawled over and peeled the fabric aside. He was in my yard, down on the grass, deliberately shining a flashlight beam into my room. I screamed so loudly I hurt my own throat. My parents raced outside and searched with their own flashlight, but found nothing. They told me it must have been my imagination, a reflection from a passing car. A few nights later, on New Year's Eve, our doorbell rang. From the living room, I heard his distinctive voice. My parents answered. He was handing out flyers for a lost dog, they explained when they came back. I tried to tell them it was the man from the arena. They didn't believe me. They said I was mixing up my fears. A full year later, on the next New Year's Eve, a sharp knock came at that same bedroom window. A single piece of notebook paper was taped to the outside glass. It read, in messy block letters, "This year we meet." That man knew where I lived. He'd been watching, waiting. I never felt safe on New Year's Eve again. Our third account is from Mark, a father. My wife, Elena, our 7-year-old son Ben, and I decided to finally cut down our own Christmas tree in the remote mountains. It was a family dream of ours. The designated parking lot was utterly empty when we arrived late in the afternoon. Just a few dim, orange lamps fighting the gathering gloom. We followed a narrow, unmarked trail deep into the woods, snow crunching loudly under our boots. The further we ventured, the quieter the world became. Not peaceful, but an oppressive, total silence, like the forest was holding its breath. We all admitted later we felt watched. We found a cluster of nice pines and Ben started pointing at his favorite. That's when I heard it. A slow, careful, deliberate crunch in the snow behind us, out of sync with our own steps. I turned. A man stood 20 feet back, dressed in dark, inadequate clothing, just a thin windbreaker. His exposed hands were raw and red. He smiled a thin smile, but it didn't reach his cold eyes. "Looking for a tree?" he asked, his voice flat. My son, excited, said, "Yes," before I could stop him. Elena quickly lied, saying, "Oh no, we're just hiking through." The man took a step closer. "Don't worry," he said, his gaze flicking to the axe in my hand. "I'm not a ranger." His stare was intense, hungry. We decided to leave immediately. As we hurried back, I kept glancing over my shoulder. Each time, he was a little closer, moving with an unsettling silence. When the parking lot lights finally became visible through the trees, I told my family to run for the truck. I turned and stood my ground, holding the axe out in front of me. He had stopped. He put his hands up in a mock surrender, that same empty smile on his face. "No harm," he said. Then he added casually, "You should get back to your SUV now." My blood turned to ice. He knew exactly what vehicle we drove. I backed away to the lot. Elena screamed my name. Both tires on the driver's side were viciously slashed, flat to the rims. We had almost no cell service. Elena finally found one bar and dialed 911. Her voice panicked. The call was terrible, breaking up. Then she gasped and pointed a trembling finger. At the distant tree line, 3 figures now stood in a line, watching us. 2 of them began walking slowly, methodically, toward our stranded truck. The operator, her voice crackling, asked if I had any kind of weapon. I told her I had the axe. She told me, her tone deadly serious, to be ready to use it to defend my family. The 2 approaching figures called out, "We're here to help you." But their hollow, monotone voices made my skin crawl. Then, they suddenly stopped, turned, and sprinted back into the woods. In the distance, the beautiful sound of sirens wailed, growing closer. The police found plenty of tracks leading deep into the wilderness. Transients, they theorized, squatters living off the grid. But they had strategically slashed our tires. They had been waiting, hunting. In the deep woods, the greatest threat isn't the cold, but the shadows that move within it. Our final story is from Leo. When I was 9, my parents left me home alone for just an hour one pre-Christmas evening. I was nestled by the tree watching classic holiday movies. The doorbell rang, sharp and unexpected. I knew the rule: never answer. But curiosity got me. I padded to the door and looked through the peephole. A Santa Claus stood there on the porch. The full, cheap-looking suit, the white beard, the hat. But he held no bag of presents, just a clipboard. He leaned in close, distorting his face in the fisheye lens. "It's Santa," he said in a forced, overly cheerful voice. "I've got special gifts for this house. Open up." I was old enough to know better. My voice quavered as I told him to go away. We didn't want anything. He went completely silent. Then he asked, slowly, "Are you home all by yourself?" True, icy fear shot through me. I backed away from the door. I heard the front doorknob jiggle, metal on metal. Then, seconds later, from the back of the house, the distinct sound of the back door handle being tested, twisted. He was checking every possible way in. I ran for the kitchen phone and called my mom, whispering. She told me to hide and not make a sound. I crouched behind the big sofa, listening to slow, heavy footsteps crunching the gravel as they circled the house. My mom's car finally screeched into the driveway. She'd seen him, a man in a Santa suit cutting quickly through yards down our street. When she'd yelled from her car, he claimed to be collecting charity donations. He hurried away into the night. The police were called. Neighbors confirmed a Santa had knocked, but it felt like a scam. For me, it wasn't about a scam. He had heard my young voice. He knew a child was inside and vulnerable. He tried the locks. These are the stories where the festive lights cast the longest, darkest shadows. If you've made it this far, you understand that chilling feeling, the one that lingers long after the tree is taken down. If these true tales gripped you, please show your support. It helps the channel more than you know. Hit the like button and subscribe to Horror Drop for more weekly journeys into the unexplained. What is the most unsettling holiday experience you've ever had or heard from someone you trust? Let's talk in the comments below.